The gospel for today, which immediately follows a couple of stories that you probably all remember, and it's sort of important. And that is the story where Jesus, of course, fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. You probably remember that story. And another one was when Jesus walked on water. I remember as a young lad, that's when I really, for some reason, it sunk in with me. It's like, how on earth could that possibly happen? But the essence of those stories had to do with the disciples' belief in God, believing that he actually walked on water. And the gospel for today also has integral into it that notion of belief. In verse 35, we have the first of the I am statements that we heard about earlier. And it's interesting that the I am statements are sort of unique to the style in which John does his writing. And it seems that at that time, the relationship of humanity to Jesus, or Jesus' relationship with humanity, is sort of the essence, again, of the point of the I am statements. And that's something that's integral to this John scripture. Now, this relationship both is from the standpoint of the Son of God, which is sort of in a human sense, and then the sense that Jesus is an example of the image of God. Now, there's 2 major elements to me in this whole passage. One is that God is our provider of life, and the second is that belief is our power from God in our life. So just briefly to expand on those, bread is probably the most iconic symbol of humanity. We have to eat, and bread has been around, of course, through human history. Every thing you read about, or whether it goes back to cavemen or whenever, has to do with people eating. And bread is the essence of it. It's a simple food to prepare. People grow their grains and prepare bread. And it's also not cultural specific. All cultures need bread. But in the scripture here, bread is in a broader context, in the sense that it's about food that we need to live. So bread is the embodiment of all that food in which we need. But the second is the belief, and belief is a concept that's a little more abstract when people think about belief. Definition I looked up of belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And that's with or without proof. So we say we believe in God, although it seems to be abstract from a human sense. Belief is the power in our lives, and this power that comes from belief can change us in both positive and negative ways. So again, in the scripture, those 2 notions of the bread and the notion of belief. Since 1890, no one in the Olympics or anywhere in recorded history could run a mile in under 4 minutes. Everyone thought it was impossible. The belief was, the doctors said a human can't run that fast. It's physically impossible. Their legs won't move fast enough. They don't have enough energy. Any number of reasons. But since 1890, no one could run faster than 4 minutes or longer on a mile. Well, that was, as I said, hard for anybody to believe that could happen. But there were a couple of people that actually believed it was possible that you could run a mile. You could run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And in fact, on May 6th, 1954, 2 years after the Olympics, when it was tried and failed, and people said, see, that's the way it is, in poor conditions on a day with rain and 25-mile-an-hour winds, a guy named Roger Bannister got up in the morning from his work in the hospital, and he knew that there's no better time than now, and there was a meet going on. So him and 5 others ran in a meet in England. Well, needless to say, he won the race, and he actually ran a mile in 3 minutes, 59 seconds, 0.4, which was then, of course, a world record. Now, the interesting thing, how could this happen? How could he actually do that? Everybody believed that it's impossible to do that. Well, it just so happens everybody had a mental block in their belief because everybody believed that it was impossible. So from 1890 till 1954, no one ran a mile in under 4 minutes. 46 days later, somebody else ran a mile in under 4 minutes. And since that time, there's been 25 or 30 more records set. In fact, now you can look up the record for a mile, but it's about 3 minutes and 43 seconds to run a mile. The power of belief changed that small piece of sports history. As we know that God is the bread of life, are we feeding ourselves with that bread and belief? More importantly, are we sharing that bread and belief with someone else? I'll repeat verse 35 in conclusion. I am the bread of life, Jesus told them. No one who comes to me will ever be hungry, and no one who believes in me will ever be thirsty again.